My wife lied about bike rides. I caught her in a hotel with another man, and what she did next shocked me. My name's Matt, and I've been married to Emily for 6 years. We've got 2 kids, Jason 4 and Lily, who just turned 2. Our marriage was what I'd call pretty solid. We had our ups and downs, but nothing out of the ordinary. That's what I thought, anyway. About 6 months ago, Emily got really into horseback riding. It started as something for her to do on the weekends, a hobby she picked up with some friends. At first, I was all for it. She's been a stay-at-home mom for the past few years, and I figured she needed something to break up the monotony of being with the kids all day. Plus, it wasn't cheap, and I was happy I could afford it for her. But then things started getting weird. What used to be a once-a-week thing turned into almost every day. She'd leave early in the morning and come back late, claiming she was at the stables for hours or riding with her friends. Now, I know riding takes time, but she was spending whole days out, and when she came back, she always seemed distant. Her clothes smelled like the barn, but she looked too done up for someone who'd been around horses all day. And she'd often have fresh makeup on when she came home. Who puts on makeup to go muck stalls? Then came the weekends where she said she was going on a trail ride out of town. The first few times, I didn't question it. I figured she deserved a break, and the kids and I could manage. But as those trips got longer, I started feeling uneasy. She'd come back late Sunday night, exhausted but weirdly quiet. And when I'd asked her how it went, her answers were vague. It was great, just tiring. Or, the trail was beautiful, you should come with me sometime. I wanted to believe her. I didn't want to be that guy, the suspicious husband, but things didn't add up. One time, I offered to go with her, just to see what she loved so much about riding. She hesitated, saying I wouldn't enjoy it, that it was her time to unwind. It stung, but I let it go. Then, 2 weekends ago, something happened that I couldn't ignore. Emily told me she was going on another weekend trail ride, but the night she was supposed to leave, I got a call from one of her friends, someone I hadn't heard from in months. She asked me if Emily was okay. Confused, I told her she was fine and had gone riding for the weekend. Her friend paused before saying, "Matt, I haven't seen Emily at the stables in months. She hasn't been coming to ride with us. Is she riding somewhere else?" That hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know what to say. Emily had been telling me she was riding almost every day, that she was going on these weekend trips with the same friends she apparently hadn't been seeing. I hung up the phone, and everything started clicking. The weird distance, the full makeup after riding, the trail rides I wasn't invited to, it all suddenly made sense. Something was going on, and I wasn't sure I was ready to find out what it was. After that call from Emily's friend, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was really wrong. She told me she was going on another weekend trail ride, just like she had been doing for months now. But after hearing from her friend that she hadn't been to the stables in ages, I couldn't let it go. I needed to know where she was actually spending her weekends. That Sunday, she came home late, looking the same as always, hair perfect, makeup on point, and smelling like perfume, not horses. She gave me the usual story about being exhausted from the ride, but when I looked in her car, her riding boots were in the back seat, completely spotless. It was like she hadn't even touched the stable. The next day, while she was at work, I decided to follow the route she always took to the stables, just to see if there was something I was missing. When I got there, her car wasn't anywhere in sight. I kept driving, feeling this growing pit in my stomach, and then I saw it. A small bed and breakfast tucked away down a quiet road, with Emily's car parked right out front. My heart sank. She wasn't at the stables. She was here, at some B&B. I parked down the road and just sat there, staring at her car, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Who was she with? Why was she lying to me? I had all these questions racing through my mind, but I couldn't bring myself to go inside and find out. I didn't know if I could handle the truth. For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus on anything else. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with a million scenarios. I wanted to confront her the moment she walked through the door, but something held me back. Maybe I wasn't ready to hear the lies she'd come up with or face what she was doing. But one thing was clear, I couldn't ignore it anymore. After finding Emily's car at that bed and breakfast, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her walking out with someone else, laughing, happy, like everything was normal. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, but I also didn't know how to bring it up without losing it. So I waited until the next weekend, when she said she was going on another trail ride. This time, I decided to confront her differently. I didn't yell or accuse her when she was packing up to leave. Instead, I casually mentioned that I'd looked into a weekend getaway for the two of us, a little surprise trip. Her reaction was strange, almost nervous. She hesitated before saying, "That sounds great, but maybe another time. This weekend is just for me and the girls." It was the way she said it, too quick, too rehearsed, that made me snap. "Really? Because I found your car parked outside that bed and breakfast last weekend. So, unless your trail ride included a cozy room, I'd love to know what's really going on." The color drained from her face. For a second, I thought she might deny it, but then she just stood there, speechless, her hands shaking as she fumbled with her bag. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I stayed calm. I needed to hear it from her. "Emily," I said, my voice tight, "who are you meeting at that place?" At first, she wouldn't look at me, just stared at the floor like she was trying to figure out what to say. Finally, she muttered, "It's not what you think, Matt." That line, that cliché excuse, hit me harder than I expected. "I just needed space," she added, her voice barely above a whisper. "Space." I repeated, my heart pounding. "You needed space. So you lied to me for months? Who is he?" She finally looked up, tears in her eyes. "It's just a friend, someone I met through the riding group. It didn't mean anything. I was just feeling trapped, and I needed to get away. I never meant to hurt you. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. A friend? Just a friend?" After all the lies, the sneaking around, this was the excuse she was giving me? I wanted to yell, to scream at her for betraying me, but I just stood there, stunned. "I don't even know who you are anymore," I finally said. "You could have come to me, told me what was wrong. Instead, you lied over and over. I'm taking the kids to my mom's for the weekend. You figure out what you want, but don't expect things to go back to the way they were." After our confrontation, I packed a bag for the kids and drove to my mom's place. Emily tried to stop me, but I didn't want to hear anything more. I just needed space to think without her hovering around, trying to spin more lies. The whole drive, my mind was racing, trying to piece together how long this had been going on and whether there was anything left to salvage. At my mom's, I tried to play it cool for Jason and Lily's sake, but inside, I was a mess. My mom could tell something was wrong right away. She didn't ask questions, but I could see the concern on her face. I wasn't ready to tell her what was happening yet. I didn't even know how to explain it to myself. So I kept it vague and said that Emily and I were having some problems, and I just needed a couple days to clear my head. That night, after I got the kids to bed, I sat outside with my mom. She didn't push, but eventually I spilled everything. I told her about Emily's trail rides, the bed and breakfast, and how she had lied straight to my face. My mom was quiet for a long time after I finished, just staring out into the yard. Then she finally said, "You've got to decide, Matt, what's worth saving and what's not." Those words hit me hard. Was there even anything left worth saving? I thought about the life we had built, the kids, the years we spent together, and the woman I thought I knew. And then I thought about the lies, the betrayal, and how easily she had slipped into a double life without me even knowing. That night, Emily texted me a few times, asking when I'd be home, saying we needed to talk, but I wasn't ready to answer. I couldn't bring myself to respond. I didn't want to hear more excuses, more explanations that wouldn't make a difference. The next day, she called. I let it ring a few times before I answered, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "I don't know what else you want me to say," she started, her voice shaky. I never meant for things to get this far. It just happened. I felt alone, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I never wanted to hurt you, Matt. I don't care about what you meant, Emily. I care about what you did, I said, trying to hold back the anger. You lied to me, to our family. I need to know if this is over. This guy, the lies, all of it. Or if you're just waiting for me to come back, so you can keep going behind my back. She was quiet for a moment, then finally said, It's over, Matt. I swear it's over. I don't want to lose you. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. But could I believe her? That's the question I kept asking myself. Could I ever trust her again? I wasn't sure. I'm not ready to come back yet, I said. I need more time. I don't know if I can just move past this. I'll stay at my mom's with the kids for a few days, and we'll figure out what happens next. I could hear her crying softly on the other end of the line, but I didn't know if that meant anything anymore. I hung up and sat there, trying to figure out where we go from here. After a few more days at my mom's, I realized I couldn't keep avoiding the inevitable. Emily had been texting me nonstop, telling me she was sorry and that she wanted to fix things. I thought about Jason and Lily. They deserved to have both parents around, and I didn't want to make any rash decisions without at least trying for their sake. But trust doesn't come back just because someone says sorry. I didn't know if I could ever truly look at her the same way again. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I called her. I kept my voice steady and told her I was willing to give it a shot, but I wasn't making any promises. I said, We're doing this for the kids, Emily. I'm not saying I forgive you, and I don't even know if I ever will. But if we try, there can't be any more lies. No more secrets. Everything has to be out in the open. She sounded relieved, like she'd been waiting for me to give her that chance. I'll do whatever it takes, Matt, she said, her voice shaky. Counseling, therapy, whatever you need. I know I messed up, but I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our family. I told her I'd come home the next day, but I made it clear this wasn't a clean slate. We'd take things one step at a time, and I wasn't going to rush back into being the same couple we were before. If she wanted to earn my trust again, it was going to take more than just words. I didn't know what our future looked like, but I was willing to try, for the kids at least. After we hung up, I sat there feeling torn. Part of me was relieved that I'd made a decision, but another part wondered if I was just setting myself up for more pain. Could we really come back from this? Could I ever forgive her? Or was I just delaying the inevitable? The next morning, I packed up the kids and headed home. The drive was quiet, and I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Even if we tried to patch things up, things would never go back to the way they were. But at least now, there was a path forward. Whether it was the right one, I didn't know yet. Walking back into the house felt strange. It wasn't like coming home. It felt more like walking into a place I barely recognized. The kids ran ahead of me, happy to be back, and for their sake, I tried to act normal. But the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. Emily was there, waiting. She looked tired. Her eyes read like she'd been crying for days, but she tried to smile. "Hi," she said softly, almost like she didn't know what to say. "Hi," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I didn't want to make a scene in front of the kids, so I told them to go play in their room while we talked. Once they were out of earshot, the awkwardness between us settled in. Emily sat on the couch, and I stood, not sure where to even begin. Part of me wanted to demand answers, to make her explain everything, but another part of me felt too drained to fight. "I know I've messed up," she began, her voice shaky, "and I know it's going to take time. But I'm here, Matt. I'm going to do everything I can to fix this." I looked at her, trying to gauge whether I believed her or not. "It's not just about saying you'll fix it, Emily," I said, sitting down across from her. "You can't just expect things to go back to how they were. I don't even know if I want that." She nodded, tears welling up again. I know it's going to take time. I just want you to know that I'm committed to making it right, however long it takes." We sat there in silence for a few minutes. The weight of everything that had happened seemed to hang in the room between us. I didn't know what the next step was. Counseling? Trying to talk things through? Or just pretending things were okay for the sake of the kids? For now, I decided not to push for any big answers. "We'll take it slow," I said, finally breaking the silence. "One step at a time." Emily nodded, looking relieved, though I still didn't feel any closer to trusting her. But it was a start, and that's all I could manage for now. The first few days back home were tough. Emily tried hard to act like things were normal, making dinner, playing with the kids, but I could see the guilt and nervousness in her every move. I wasn't making it easy either. I didn't trust her, and it showed. I couldn't bring myself to be affectionate, or even sit too close to her on the couch. Every time I looked at her, all I could think about was that bed and breakfast and the lies she'd told me. We talked, but it was mostly surface-level stuff. What the kids needed, schedules, errands. The real conversation, the one about what she'd done and how we were supposed to move forward, was hanging over us, but neither of us seemed ready to dive into it yet. I think we were both afraid of where that conversation would lead. After a few days, Emily suggested counseling. "I know it's not going to fix everything," she said, "but maybe it's a start. We could go together or separately, if you prefer." I wasn't thrilled with the idea at first. Talking to a stranger about our problems felt uncomfortable, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized we couldn't fix this on our own. There was too much damage, too much mistrust. "I'll think about it," I told her. That night, after the kids went to bed, I found myself alone in the kitchen, staring at the dinner table where we used to sit together as a family. I wanted that feeling back, the feeling that everything was okay, that my family was solid. But now, all I felt was a heavy emptiness. I knew things would never be the same, but I didn't know if I was ready to let go of what we had built completely. The next day, I agreed to counseling. "We'll try it," I told Emily, "but this doesn't mean everything is fixed. I still need time." She nodded, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. But for me, the road ahead still looked long and uncertain. I wasn't sure if counseling would help or if I'd ever be able to truly forgive her, but I owed it to the kids, and maybe to myself, to at least try. Emily set up our first counseling session the following week, and I wasn't sure what to expect. We needed to do something. Things at home were tense, and the kids were starting to feel it too. I figured even if I wasn't ready to forgive her, at least counseling might help us figure out what to do next. When we walked into the therapist's office, it felt weird being there together. Emily sat close, but I still felt miles away from her. The therapist, Denise, started by asking us why we were there. Emily spoke first, saying how much she regretted what she'd done and how she wanted to make things right. I didn't say much, just listened. Then Denise turned to me. I didn't hold back. "I'm here because I don't know if I can trust her again. I'm angry, and I'm not sure if we can come back from this. I'm only here for the kids at this point." We spent most of the session talking about our relationship, how we got to this point, and what we wanted moving forward. It was tough, but it felt good to get some of it out in the open. When the session ended, I didn't feel fixed or even hopeful, but I felt like we'd at least taken the first step. That night, Emily thanked me for going, but I couldn't give her much. "This is just the beginning," I told her. "I don't know where we'll end up." She nodded and we went to bed, still distant. We've got another session lined up, but I'm still on the fence. If anyone has been through something like this, how long did it take for things to get better? Does counseling really help? I'm trying, but it's hard to see a clear path forward. The next few days after our first counseling session felt strange. Emily was trying, I could tell. She was being more open, checking in with me, making small efforts around the house. But I was still struggling to let my guard down. The hurt was still fresh, and no amount of her trying could erase that just yet. We had another counseling session scheduled for the end of the week. I wasn't dreading it, but I wasn't exactly looking forward to it either. Denise had told us to think about what we wanted to come out of these sessions, but the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Part of me missed the way things were before, but another part of me knew we could never go back to that. When we sat down for our second session, Denise asked us to talk about how the past week had been. Emily said she felt hopeful that we were making progress, but I wasn't sure if I felt the same. It's hard, I admitted. I'm still angry, and I don't know if we can ever really move past this. Denise nodded, and I could see Emily's face fall, though she tried to hide it. That's normal, Matt, Denise said. Rebuilding trust takes time. It's not going to happen in a week or even a month, but the fact that you're here means you're at least open to the idea of healing. I wasn't so sure. We talked more about our communication, or lack of it, over the past few years. I realized we hadn't really been honest with each other for a long time. Emily had been keeping things from me, and I had been avoiding difficult conversations. It was a hard pill to swallow, realizing that maybe we had been broken long before the affair. After the session, we went home in silence. Emily looked like she wanted to say something, but neither of us spoke. That night, after the kids went to bed, she finally asked, "Do you think we'll ever get back to how we were?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I'm trying, but I don't have an answer for you right now." The days after that second counseling session were heavy. We weren't fighting, but there was this thick tension between us, like we were both waiting for something to break. Emily was trying. I could see that, but I still couldn't shake the doubt, the mistrust. It hung over everything, no matter how much she apologized or tried to make things right. A few days later, we had another session scheduled. This time, Denise asked us to talk about what we needed from each other to start rebuilding. Emily went first, saying she needed patience, that she knew she'd broken my trust and it would take time. She promised, again, that she was committed to doing whatever it took. When it was my turn, I struggled to find the words. "I need to believe you," I finally said. "But right now, I don't. I don't know if I ever will." Denise nodded, not surprised by my answer. "It's okay to feel that way, Matt. You've been hurt, and trust doesn't just come back because someone says they're sorry. But trust can be rebuilt if both of you are committed to putting in the work." The session ended on that note, and as we left, Emily looked at me with a kind of desperation in her eyes. "I'm not going to give up on us, Matt," she said quietly. "Even if you're not sure yet, I'm not walking away." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had been angry for so long that I hadn't really let myself see that she was trying. Maybe I was afraid that if I let my guard down, I'd just get hurt again. But hearing her say that, so determined, so certain, made me realize something. She was fighting for this marriage, and I needed to figure out if I was willing to fight, too. That night, I sat down and thought about everything. The kids, our years together, the good times and the bad. I wasn't sure if we could ever get back to what we had, but maybe we could build something new. Maybe it wouldn't be the same, but it could be better in some ways. More honest. The next morning I told Emily, "I'm still not there yet, but I'm willing to keep trying. For the kids. For us. But I need you to understand, this isn't going to be easy, and I don't know if we'll make it through." "I know," she said, tears in her eyes. "But I'll take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As the days passed, the heaviness of everything still lingered. Emily was doing her best, checking in, being open, making sure I knew she was committed to making things right. But even though she was trying, I felt like something inside me had shifted permanently. The doubt didn't go away just because she was being honest now. I kept waiting for it to. We were continuing with counseling, and Denise kept pushing us to dig deeper. She said it wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about everything that led up to it. The little cracks in our communication, the times we let things slide instead of talking about them. Hearing that was tough because it made me realize we hadn't been as solid as I thought, even before all this. Emily admitted that she had been feeling neglected for a long time, but didn't know how to tell me. It hurt to hear, but I also knew it was true. I had been so focused on work and providing for the family that I hadn't noticed how far apart we had drifted. But still, her choice to betray me wasn't something I could just brush off. No matter how much she tried to explain it, the betrayal was still there. One night, after the kids went to bed, I found myself sitting alone in the living room, thinking about whether this was worth it. Could we really rebuild something after everything had fallen apart? Part of me wanted to believe it was possible, but another part wondered if I was holding on to a version of our marriage that didn't exist anymore. Emily joined me after a while, sitting down quietly beside me. "I know you're still unsure," she said softly. "I get it, but I want you to know that I'm not going to stop trying, even if it takes months, even if it takes years. I'll wait for you to trust me again." I didn't know how to respond. I appreciate what she was saying, but I wasn't sure if her words were enough to heal the damage. I just don't know if I can trust you like that again," I finally said. "I don't want to keep hurting, and I don't want to keep doubting everything you do." She nodded, tears welling up. "I understand, but I'm not giving up on us. Not yet." We sat there in silence, the weight of everything pressing down on both of us. It felt like we were at a crossroads, but I still couldn't tell which way we were going to turn. In the weeks following that conversation, something shifted, not just in Emily, but in me. The weight of doubt was still there, but I started to notice the little things she was doing. She wasn't just saying she was sorry anymore, she was showing it. She'd cancel plans with friends to stay home with the kids, make time for me, and most of all, she was always open about where she was going, what she was doing. No more secrets. But even with all that, I wasn't sure if I could fully let my guard down. One night in counseling, Denise asked me a question that stuck with me. "Matt, what would it take for you to believe she's truly changed?" I didn't have an answer then, and I still didn't know. I found myself testing her in small ways. When she'd tell me she was going out to run errands, I'd casually ask her where she was going and how long she'd be gone. She always answered without hesitation, even offering to call or send pictures just to prove she was being honest. I never asked her to do that, but the fact that she was willing to meant something. One Friday evening, we were sitting together on the couch after the kids had gone to bed. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel awkward. We were watching a show we used to love, and I realized how much I had missed this, just being close without feeling the weight of everything between us. At one point, she turned to me and said, "I know it's going to take time for you to fully trust me again, and I don't expect it to happen overnight. But I just want you to know that I'm in this, Matt, for as long as it takes." I didn't say anything right away, but her words hit me differently this time. There was a sincerity I couldn't ignore. She wasn't just trying to win me over. She was genuinely committed to making things right, no matter how long it took. For the first time in months, I felt a small glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. Maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. Not the marriage we had before. It would never be the same, but something new, something better. I wasn't ready to say I forgave her yet. I wasn't even sure if I could, but for the first time, I felt like I might want to try. As the weeks passed, that small glimmer of hope started to grow, but so did my fears. Every time I felt like we were making progress, something inside me would pull me back, reminding me of the betrayal, reminding me of the hurt. It wasn't easy some days. It felt like we were moving forward, and other days, I wondered if I was just fooling myself, trying to hold on to something that was already gone. Emily continued to show up in ways she hadn't before. She was transparent about everything, always asking me how I felt and if there was anything more she could do. But even with her efforts, I still felt stuck in that limbo between trusting her again and staying guarded. I didn't know how long I could live in that space. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Emily sat down across from me at the kitchen table. She looked nervous, like she had something weighing on her mind. "Matt," she began, her voice soft, "I know I've hurt you, and I know you're still struggling. But I need to ask you something. Are you still in this? Do you still want to try?" Her question caught me off guard. I hadn't really thought about it that way before. In my mind, I was still figuring things out, still processing everything. But I could see that she needed an answer. She needed to know if I was willing to fight for this, or if I was just hanging on out of fear of letting go. I took a deep breath before speaking. I'm still here, Emily. I'm still trying. But I don't know if I'll ever feel like I used to. I want to get there, but it's hard. I can't promise that we'll end up okay, but I'm not giving up yet. She nodded, her eyes full of both relief and sadness. That's all I needed to know, she said quietly. I just wanted to make sure you weren't doing this out of obligation or just for the kids. I want you to be in this with me, not out of guilt, but because you want to be. I didn't have a response to that, at least not one I could put into words. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I was still in it for us, or if I was just afraid of breaking up our family. But I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to walk away yet. That night, lying in bed, I thought about what it would take for me to truly move forward. Maybe it was time to stop living in the past and start focusing on what we could build in the future. It wouldn't be easy and it wouldn't be fast. But I had to make a choice, either let go or give this a real shot. After that conversation with Emily, something shifted inside me. It wasn't a huge revelation or a sudden wave of forgiveness, but a small realization. I had to make a decision. I couldn't stay stuck between holding on and letting go forever. The longer I stayed in this space, the more damage I was doing. To myself, to Emily, and even to the kids, who could sense the tension, no matter how much we tried to hide it. The next day, I decided to take a step forward, even if it was a small one. I told Emily that I wanted to focus on rebuilding, not just for the kids, but for us. It didn't mean I forgave her yet, and it didn't mean the pain was gone, but I was willing to start trying in a real, tangible way. When I told her that, I could see the relief wash over her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I know it's not going to be easy, but I'll keep showing up, Matt. Every day. For us." We started spending more time together. Real time. Not just awkward conversations about the kids or counseling sessions. We went on walks, cooked dinner together, and slowly began talking about things that didn't revolve around the affair. For the first time in months, it felt like we were connecting again, even if the connection was fragile. I'd be lying if I said it was smooth sailing. There were still moments where the doubt crept in, where I'd see her on her phone and feel that familiar surge of suspicion, or catch myself wondering if she was being completely honest. But I was learning to manage it, to not let it control me. Denise had said it would take time, and she wasn't wrong. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight, but brick by brick. One evening, while we were sitting on the porch after putting the kids to bed, Emily turned to me and asked, "Do you think we'll make it?" It was a heavy question, but this time, I didn't feel overwhelmed by it. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I think we're starting to figure it out." Slowly, Emily smiled, the kind of small, hopeful smile I hadn't seen in a long time. "That's enough for me." We sat in silence after that, the weight between us feeling lighter for once. It wasn't a perfect moment, but it was real, and for now, that was enough. It's been a few months since I made the decision to take that first step toward rebuilding, and while we're not completely healed, things are different now, better even. It hasn't been easy. There are still days when I feel the weight of what happened, and moments when the trust wavers. But we're moving forward, slowly and intentionally. Counseling has helped, but more than that, it's the daily effort that's making the difference. Emily continues to show up in ways she never did before. She's transparent about everything, her schedule, her thoughts, her feelings. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're really talking, not just brushing past the hard stuff. I've learned that rebuilding trust isn't about one big act of forgiveness. It's about the little things. Her calling me on the way home just to check in, us sitting together at the end of the day and actually connecting, and me letting go of the need to check her every move. Slowly, I'm starting to trust her again. It's not the same blind trust one had before, but it's more cautious, more aware, and maybe that's a good thing. We're not pretending the affair didn't happen, but we're learning to live with it and grow from it. One evening, after the kids were in bed, we were sitting together on the couch. The TV was on, but neither of us was really watching it. Emily looked over at me, hesitated for a second, then said, "I know I've said this 1,000 times, but thank you for not giving up on us. I don't think I would have been able to do this without you staying, even when it was hard." I looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger or hurt when she talked about what happened. Instead, I felt peace. Not because the pain was gone, but because I knew we had worked through something that could have destroyed us, and we were still here. "I didn't do it alone," I said. "We both had to choose to stay." We sat there, the quiet between us feeling comfortable, not heavy. For the first time since this all began, I could see a future where we might actually make it, where we weren't just surviving, but rebuilding something new.